All right, I think we're good to go ahead and get started. And just in case anybody is still running late or is unable to join, this will be recorded, as you probably just heard. So no worries, you can always have the recording to fall back on. But I do want to welcome everyone and thank you for taking the time to join me for this demo today. I appreciate you giving me some time to go over how our product works and show you everything that Honorlock has to offer. Before we do get started, I know probably everybody's a Zoom pro by now, being forced to use it for so long. But I did share my screen, so it should have forced the meeting to full screen for you. So if you're okay with that, you can leave it be, of course. But if you prefer how it was before, you should be able to click on the view options at the top of your screen to adjust it back to your preferred view. Now, throughout the duration of this demo, I know you'll probably have several questions. But I will be going over everything in great detail. So I'll hopefully be able to answer all of those questions along the way. But if not, just please hold on to those questions and I will give you a chance to ask those at the end. Or if you'd like to enter a question into the chat, you can do that as well. And I'll get to it when we get to the question portion. All right. So as you can see, we're going to go ahead and just get started right away on our demo. I'm already logged into Blackboard here. So we just need to go into our course, which for me is listed here, HL Prod CSM. Okay, and then once we're inside our course, the first thing that your faculty will need to do will be to add the Honorlock tool to their course. So in order to do that, and just to show you how easy that is, we're going to go into content. And then from here, the Honorlock LTI can actually be in two different places, depending on how it was added on your end. So it could either be in build content or tools, most likely. And so for me, it's under tools, but it may be different for you guys on your end if you get any questions like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on the Honorlock LTI here under tools, and then it will take us to this page. So on this page is where you can name the tool, which of course you will most likely just want to name it Honorlock. And then you can add a description here if your faculty would like, but it's not necessary or not required, I should say. But the most important factor on this page is if you scroll down and you see this option here, this permit users to view this content, this is the only important part really on this page. Is you want to make sure this is always set to yes, because if it is set to no, it'll just have some viewing issues on instructors and student sides as well. So just one important thing to note, if you get any questions on this option here, permit users to view this content should always be marked as yes. And then we simply just scroll down to the bottom, click on submit, and that would add the Honorlock LTI to a faculty's course. Now I'm just going to click on cancel because I already have it added to the course here. But one last thing that your faculty will need to do in order to finish off adding Honorlock to the course, they would just need to open the Honorlock LTI one time, and then that's it. So that basically is the final step in adding Honorlock to a course. I see we got a couple questions there in the chat. Like I said, I'll hopefully be able to answer those along the way, but I'll go back to the chat at the end and answer all remaining questions at least. All right, so that only needs to be done one time for your faculty. And once that's done, there's no need to, again, add the tool again for each exam, anything like that. The Honorlock LTI will remain in their course. Okay, so and then one additional thing I do want to mention, if they did just add the Honorlock LTI, of course, most of these exams would not show up for them since they wouldn't have any Honorlock enabled exams. It would say something like no Honorlock enabled assessments just yet. So if you get any questions on that, of course, they would just need to then enable an Honorlock exam in order for one of them to show up within the actual LTI. But now that we've added the Honorlock tool to the course, I'm going to close this down and we can enable exams. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. So all we need to do is on this page, find the exam that we want to work with. And for me, I'm going to use this HL midterm exam 2021. So I'm going to click on this small drop-down arrow here next to the exam and select Edit the Test Options. Okay, and that takes us to this page here. And if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see this blue Click to Enable button underneath this Honorlock section that has been added. So all we need to do is click on this button here, Click to Enable, and that'll open up this window where you'll see all of the Honorlock proctoring settings. So I'm going to go into each one of these and tell you a little bit more about what they do, and so you get an idea of the different options that your faculty have in customizing their proctoring level for their exams. So basically, on this page is where they will be picking their desired proctoring level, and it's done through 4 main sections. And it's this proctoring settings here at the top. And then you'll see student guidelines, and then accommodations, and then exam visibility as well, all the way down at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to explain all about these in a little bit, but I do want to mention something that's very important before I go into the settings. So if I scroll down a little bit further in this test availability section here, you'll see a password that was added by Honorlock, where we are here, right here. So you'll see this section, and this password was automatically added by Honorlock when you click that enable button. It's very important that these passwords are never edited, removed entirely, or shared with students. So this is, if there's one thing to take away from the demo, and I'll definitely reiterate this when I present this to all faculty, is to never change or edit this password, or it will absolutely give students issues when trying to launch Honorlock, and even sometimes bypassing Honorlock proctoring completely. So very important thing to note is this password should never be changed or shared with students. So now that I covered that, I do want to come back up here and we'll go through these settings. So starting with the proctoring settings, record webcam. This setting toggled on is very simple. It'll basically mean that an HD recording will be made of the student's webcam during the exam session. So everything captured on their webcam will be recorded for your faculty to review after the exam session is submitted. And then we have record screen, which is very similar, of course, to record webcam, except this will record your student's screen while they're within an exam session. So anything a student does on screen, so from, of course, the exam itself, or if they were to open another browser and try to search for answers, something like that, all of that will be recorded throughout the session. And then one thing to note as well when record screen is enabled for an exam is when this is toggled on, students will be required to use only one monitor as well. And this is intended behavior. And the reason we do that is that it ensures that we have visibility into the student's primary screen. So that's something to note there if you have a lot of students that like to have a dual monitor setup. Then this next one, record web traffic, will do just that. It records all web traffic on the Google Chrome browser while the exam is active. Now, you'll notice I did say Google Chrome browser specifically, and that is because Honorlock is a Chrome extension. So students must use Google Chrome to take Honorlock enabled exams. But that being said, we do support multiple types of devices, and those being Windows 10 devices, Mac devices, and even Chromebooks as well. So something to note there. And then next, this student photo is basically just a student selfie that they'll take during the authentication process. Now, important thing with this enabled that I do want you to know is that we're not actually matching the student photo up to any known databases, nor are we scanning the student's face using facial recognition technology. So these photos are taken solely for the purpose of confirmation later on during your faculty's review process. So just to know, we're not using any facial recognition technology during the student photo step. And then student ID, very similar, but this will require the student to scan their photo ID, preferably a school photo ID. But if they don't have one, we do also accept any form of government issued photo ID as well, like a driver's license or a passport. And just like in the student photo step, we're not actually scanning the student photo on their ID to match it to anything, but what we're actually scanning here is the name on their ID. So we're making sure that the name on the student's ID matches the name of the student within Blackboard. Now, I do bring this up because there have been issues in the past where maybe students have used an abbreviated form of their name within an LMS. You know, perhaps they recently gotten married, so their names changed, things like that. So I'll just make sure to make your students aware of that beforehand or before they take their first high stakes exam with Honorlock, just to make sure that they're prepared with an updated ID. And then next we have this room scan step. Now the room scan is where we'll require a student to perform a 360-degree scan of their testing environment with their webcam. So when they begin, there's a clear direction at the top of their screen that tells them to do so. But it is important to set expectations with students beforehand on what you specifically expect from this room scan. And this goes on a per instructor basis. So an important thing to note is that the room scan is entirely self-guided and there is no AI present during the scan. So if a student, you know, or let's say a professor asked a student to show their notes that they're allowed to use, say it's an open note exam, and they ask them to show their notes, you know, front and back to the camera during the room scan, and they don't do that, there won't be any AI that prevents them from moving forward. So just to stress the importance of reviewing room scans after each exam session is submitted. And then mandatory review here, that's actually an additional level of service that was, I'm not sure if that was signed on for Frederick or not, but basically this is where a proctor would go in after each exam session is submitted and review the entire session manually. So if you have any specific questions on that, feel free to send me those after our training, and I'll be happy to answer those as well. And then next you'll see basic and scientific calculator, and these two are connected, and the only reason I say they're connected is because you can only enable one at a time just to limit any confusion in case there was any misclicks or something like that. But these would enable either a basic 4-function calculator or a scientific calculator for your exam, or obviously no calculator at all if you don't need one. And then next we have disable copy and paste, which does just that. It disables the browser's copy and paste function. So during their exam. So if a student were to try to highlight something and then copy and paste, when they try to right click, that will be flagged within their student session. So it won't actually bring up those options to do so, and it'll give them a notification that, you know, right clicking is not allowed during the exam. And then next, disable printing. Very simple. This disables the browser's printing function during an exam or while an exam is active. So if, you know, you worry about students trying to like print out an exam and share questions or answers with students later on, this would be the setting to use. And then next you see Browser Guard. And this one is essentially Honorlock's version of a lockdown browser. So while active, it will prevent students from opening new tabs and accessing other applications. But an important thing to note, because Honorlock is a Chrome extension and not actual software on the device, it cannot actually prevent students from opening other applications. However, it will prevent them from using these applications by constantly pushing Chrome to the front of their screen. So in other words, while active, even if the student were to open another application on their device, Browser Guard would push Chrome in front of that application, you know, essentially rendering that application useless. But one thing to note here as well on Browser Guard, that function is currently, I say currently because we're working to improve this, but this currently works on Mac devices only as such. Now, students will still be flagged as normal if they tried to exit a browser or open something else, but it wouldn't push the browser in front of whatever other application they're trying to use. So that is something to note there. So a little extra attention to Windows devices for right now, when Browser Guard is used, it would be helpful. And then next we have allowed site URLs. So if this section, it's a little drop down menu. So if it's not enabled, your instructors won't see it. but if you click on that, it will open this section up for you. So this is basically a list of allowed URLs for the exam. So let's just say faculty wanted a video on YouTube to be utilized for an exam. It's important to note that if you just put youtube.com, this gives students access to everything that's on YouTube. So it is important to make any distinction if there's like a specific video or a specific website or a page on a website, I should say, that you want to be allowed, to indicate that with anything that might follow a / within the URL. And then last here, you'll see the simulated not proctored tab. This is very important to only use for low stakes assignments or practice exams. And the reason being is, although your students will still need to comply with all previous settings that have been chosen, the exam is not proctored via AI or recorded for faculty's review afterwards. So this just gives students the impression that they're being proctored as if it were a normal exam, but they're not being proctored. So if this were utilized, it wouldn't count towards your sessions or users or anything like that. But it is important to note that if this is used for a high stakes exam, that might not be such a good thing. All right, so before I actually move on to this next student guidelines section, since I did just mention practice exams, you can very easily add a practice exam to your course by coming up to the top right section. Well, I have to do that in the LTI, actually. I apologize for that, but let me show you what that looks like. So if I open this LTI and I want to add a practice exam to a course, you can come up here to this little menu button here, click on that, and you'll see this add practice exam button here. So clicking on this will open a window that it gives a downloadable guide along with Honorlock's practice exam template. So it's literally an exam that's already created just to test out Honorlock for students that might not be comfortable with it. So this definitely helps simplify the process of setting up a practice exam. So I did just want to show you before I moved on to that, since I mentioned practice exams. Okay, so back here. All right, moving on to our student guidelines here. These are just additional settings that you can control for each exam that allow you to further customize your level of proctoring. They're a little separate from the ones that I just went over. In a recent update as well, these top 3 settings, there was I should say there was a slight change to these top 3. So open book allowed, notes allowed, and scratch paper allowed. And basically, to cover that change, students will no longer be flagged or have their exams paused if their face is partially out of view and any of those 3 aforementioned guidelines are turned on. So just to clarify, this does not apply to students whose faces are completely out of view. So if a student did leave the testing area entirely, they would still be flagged for that. But as you can imagine, if you have notes you're allowed to use, you're going to look down, or scratch paper, you're going to work on a problem or something like that, your face is probably going to go out of view of the camera. So we made that change just to alleviate some over flagging issues. All right, so going further into these settings, open book allowed does just that. It allows your students to use a physical or e-version of their textbook. So if an e-version of the textbook is allowed, we just want to make sure that that link to that ebook is being added to the allowed URLs section up here. Because if it's not, students will definitely run into some issues trying to open it, because it would prevent that link basically, because it's recognized as not allowed. Then moving forward to notes allowed, very similar. This allows students to use a physical set of notes during their exam. Now, again, we do ask for any specifications to any guideline to be added to this additional instructions section down below. So if this little drop-down menu is clicked here, this will allow faculty to expand or elaborate on anything that they want to enable for their exam. So let's just say, the faculty member does want notes allowed, but they only want 1 page of notes allowed or something to that nature. All they would have to do is explain that here in the additional instructions section, and then our proctors can view that, and then they won't, complete a pop-in or anything like that on students that may look like they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, but you've indicated that it's allowed. So that additional instructions section can be very helpful for any of the settings enabled. And then next we have scratch paper allowed, and that's again very similar, but that'll allow students to bring and use scratch paper during their exam. Again, additional instructions can be huge for that one. And then restroom breaks allowed is one that, of course, if it's a longer exam and you enable this, you're going to allow your students to use the restroom. But just to kind of clarify how we approach this. So we do recommend absolutely adding something to the additional instruction section here to eliminate your students from trying to abuse this allowance. And to kind of elaborate on that, I actually came from the student support side of things before I moved into a customer success role here. So I would get a lot of students reaching out like, every 15 minutes or so, trying, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to go to the bathroom. And if they get a different support agent and they hadn't seen that student before, that can create a problem. So just letting your students know ahead of time, hey, one restroom break of no more than 5 minutes is allowed for this exam. That can just go a long way in helping the lack of abuse, I should say, of that setting. All right, then handheld calculator allowed, very simple. That allows your students to bring and use a handheld calculator. Same thing, if they wanted to allow a specific type of calculator, just add that in the additional instruction section. But one thing to note here is that when handheld calculator is allowed, we'll never allow students to use the calculator apps on their phones as their calculator, unless of course that is specifically designated within the additional instructions. So if that's not in the additional instructions, we'll never allow a student to use their phones as a calculator because we don't have visibility into that. So they may not even be on their calculator. And then these next two guidelines, headphones and hats allowed, these kind of work in conjunction with one another. And the reason I say that, going a little bit further, headphones allowed, of course, allows your students to use headphones during an exam. And that is getting increasingly popular with exams that have audio portions on them. But the connection between these two guidelines is when headphones allowed is not enabled and hats allowed is enabled, which of course hats allowed allows students to wear a hat or a hoodie. Students can often try to hide headphones underneath a hoodie or a hat. So just something to note is if this is how your faculty like to set up their exam, that's just something to look out for there. And of course, a pop-in proctor would notify them that if that is caught, of course. All right, and then this next one, take exam in public area, very straightforward, allows students to take an exam in a public place. And then background noise allowed. This setting being on, this just can kind of ease your students' mind just in case they have a noisy home, they have brothers and sisters, so they're just other family members or friends that are there. Or we would always recommend enabling this if you allow students to take an exam in a public area. As you can imagine, there's most likely going to be background noise in a public space. Okay, and then the additional instructions, we already touched on that. Like I mentioned, you can use that to elaborate on any of the settings that are enabled. But going forward, we have the accommodations section. So this accommodations section can only be seen by Honorlock proctors and support agents. So you can use this to list specific accommodations for students. A great example would be, only John Smith is allowed to use the restroom. Let's put that there for example. Something like that. And something to note here within the accommodations is that all special testing times or additional time that some students may have for certain exams, those are all set up in the Blackboard exam settings and are automatically honored by Honorlock. So no need to also mention those two types of accommodations within this section. And those will automatically be respected. And then lastly, we have this exam visibility option down at the bottom. Now this basically just dictates when students will see the exam listed in Honorlock. So by default, when this is set to no, students will only see the exam in Honorlock during its availability period. So it won't appear before or after that time. But if it's set to yes, it will always show for students in Honorlock. Now, they won't be able to access the exam outside of the set testing window, but they will be able to see it listed. And for that reason, we do recommend leaving this set to no, just to avoid any confusion for your students. But of course, this is ultimately up to each instructor. So that's what that exam visibility setting is for. All right, and then lastly, all we need to do is click on Save and Submit. And that will enable the exam to be taken within Honorlock. All right. So yeah, so before I do move on to the next section, I think it's a good time to show you guys our exam profiles feature as well. So basically, if you know that you're going to be using those exam settings on future exams, you can click on the Honorlock LTI here. And we'll go into the exam that we just enabled. So it's at the top, Honorlock Midterm Exam 2021. Go into the settings. And then you'll see this exam profiles option up here at the top right. So if we click on exam profiles, you can basically save these exam settings for use on future exams if you know you're going to be using the same settings on each exam. So you would just have to name that midterm template, for example, and then click on create profile. And that'll save these current settings to this exam for future use. Or if your faculty have already saved some settings that they want to use on an exam that they're enabling now, you can use this drop-down menu, click on whatever option you'd like, click on apply, and that'll apply those previously saved settings to the current exam that you have open. That's how that works there. Okay, so I think it's a good time to I'll open it up for questions here since we are about half an hour through. I want to open up for questions on anything I just covered, and I'm still going to show you the session viewer as well. So I have about 15 minutes left to show you the session viewer, which is more than enough time. But before I do that, let's open it up for some questions, if there are any.
Hi, Austin. This is Alicia from the Testing Center.
Hey, Alicia, how's it going?
Well, so I had a question about whether an exam could be overridden so that a student can take it at the testing center, say that they, it's not working for them. They don't have the right device or other kind of technology. They can't access the exam. And so the instructor would like the exam to be taken at the testing center, proctored by us. Is there a way that that's something that can be done?
Yeah, so absolutely. So all you would have to do in that instance is we can provide bypass pins to bypass Honorlock. So if you have a specific student that needs to bypass Honorlock, or you don't need Honorlock to proctor their exam, all you have to do is reach out to me and I can provide you with that pin. Yeah, that's how that process works.
I have several questions.
Sure.
And hi, this is Carrie Dorman. I'm kind of the back end of Blackboard part of this.
Okay.
And so I really missed, I was thrown by the fact that this doesn't look like our environment. And I missed how faculty are supposed to be adding this to their courses. So I have installed the LTI and I still have to create placements. When we had this installed over the summer, that this wasn't the same process what you went through. So I created a placement that put the tool in a completely different location than I thought you were showing.
That's okay. If it's in a different location, that's fine. And honestly, we have other institutions that don't go that route, but I honestly just said that it will most likely show up in one of those two places I mentioned, because that's what I see most often. But if it is in a different location, it'll still work the same. You just have to relay that to your faculty and where to find it.
They would still have to add the tool to their course though? Or that's something I just need to figure out with our placements. Yeah,
where do you have it placed? Let me ask.
Right now, we don't have, I was waiting for this meeting to find out where the placements, what the expectation was.
Okay.
And that to create the placement based on those expectations.
Okay, that just might be something, once you do, figure that out, just let me know. And I don't expect you to run into any issues with that. And they would still have to do the enabling process, I believe, but I would have to have more specifics and to get an actual answer.
Gotcha. And then I just No, that's fine. No, that actually answers my question. That means that it's not just one way and one way only. So
Gotcha.
you can work that out. And then I just wanted some clarification. So if a student doesn't have a webcam and any of those webcam features are selected,
Mhm.
they not take the test?
Right. So in that
Okay.
case, so let me give you a little bit of an example. So if a student doesn't have a webcam and your faculty still wants them to be allowed to take the exam without a webcam, that is possible. That would just have to be added to the accommodation section. And then the student can reach out to support and we can let them in the exam without the webcam. If the faculty doesn't want them to take it without the webcam, then yes, they would be stopped prior during the authentication process, because that has to link with a webcam in order to even move forward. So it would stop them from taking it.
Okay. And did I hear you say that these are not mobile compatible at all?
Right. Yeah. We're not
Okay.
compatible with phones or iPads at this time, unfortunately.
And then I heard you say for this 360 room scan, if they can't make it, it won't stop them from taking the exam. I'm thinking of webcams built into the monitor and they can't really pick up the monitor and get that full 360. That won't be a problem.
Right. So for any instances where they might have a desktop and they're wired in or something like
Mhm.
that, we do recommend using like a handheld mirror. And this is where, helping us out and communicating that with your students is huge in the additional instructions. But basically they could just hold up a handheld mirror showing their device and their workspace, if they can't do a full 360 scan.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, I just have two more.
No problem.
The browser guard is only functioning on Macs right now?
So yes, so the function that I was referring to is pushing their Chrome browser to the front of their
Mhm.
screen. That's the function that's not working on Windows devices properly at the moment, but they will still be flagged for anything that they would normally be flagged for if browser guard is enabled. If they like clicked outside of the testing window, they would still get a flag for that on the session viewer.
And a last one, I promise. So for any of the features, like for example, that manual review, if it's not something that we've contracted for, it won't show up as a setting, is that correct?
Right, yeah, it's showing for me because I have it enabled in case I demonstrate it for a school that does have that, but yeah, you won't even see that on your end.
Okay, thank you so much for your indulgence. That's all my.
You're very welcome. Those are great questions. Any other questions I could help with? All right, awesome. So last thing I want to show you guys quickly is the session viewer. So this would basically be where your faculty will go in, review student sessions, review any flags, things like that. Just give me a second to scroll down to my notes here. Okay, here we go. So in order to get to that session viewer, your faculty will open the Honorlock LTI, which I have open here. And the settings, which we just gone over on the other page, of course, will take you to that, but we need to go into results. So I want to actually find Honorlock Final Exam 2021 because I have a session prepared. So we go into results, and this is what the session viewer looks like. So this will show any student that has already taken the exam. It shows their ID right underneath their name. We actually just recently switched this to show last name first as well, because that usually matches up with grade books within LMSs. And then it'll show you each flag or however many flags of each type that each student has gotten within the exam. And we'll show you if the student has been popped in on as well. So you can sort through these by each of those. So you can click on high. It'll show all high incident level sessions, medium, or pop in occurred. If you click on all three, it'll sort by all three and like which one has the most of each, or you can just sort by one option. Obviously, we recommend always sorting by either pop in occurred or high level incident sessions, as those are most likely the ones that you'll have a case of academic dishonesty on. So let's just check out a session. I need 30, I think it's this one. Yes, so this 4 high and 1 medium. So in order to go into a session and to review it, we need to click on view session. It'll open up this session viewer here, and I'm going to pause really quick so you don't hear any background noise. So this is what the session viewer looks like, and this is what it'll look like for your faculty. In the top left, this is the webcam recording that I mentioned earlier for each exam. Now, a little tip in navigating this a little easier as well. As you can see, there's no like navigation bar that originally pops up. You can just click on, or right click, I should say, click on show controls, and that'll bring up this navigation bar just to make it a little easier to scrub through sessions. I'm going to mute that. And then in the top right, this is the screen or the recording of your student's screen. Now, if you hit play to watch this, this will play simultaneously. So you can see the student, see the student's screen all at the same time and what was occurring, simultaneously. So there's no issues there. And then in the bottom right is the event list. So this will show the list of events that transpired on the exam, as well as all of the proctoring steps. So here's where you can click on steps like the room scan. If you wanted to go directly to that to review it, it'll take you directly to the room scan to review that portion of the student session. Now, an important thing to note here is that the exam timer does not start until the student enters the exam and sees question 1. So the top of this portion of the viewer here, where it says proctoring launched, that's not when the student began the exam, rather that's when they began their authentication process. So there's no confusion on that one. And then just to kind of show you what some flags look like, if I come down, we see on question 1, 2, and 3, we got some high incident levels here. So I want to review these. So if I click on this and then click on the flag, which was a face not detected flag, as you can see, the student completely exited the testing environment. I apologize for my messy room. That's gross. but yeah, so if that's how you would review a flag and that's there, it takes you directly to that portion. Of course, if you don't have restroom breaks enabled for the exam, this is a big no-no. So it'll show you face not detected. And then next we have here multiple people detected. Now, I actually didn't have another person to help me with this step, so I just used the photo on my ID. But just to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like, if a third party were to come into view of the webcam and try to help your students with a question or something like that, or just talking, and which is of course not normal exam behavior, they will be flagged for multiple people detected. And then this right click detected here, which is a medium flag. That's the one that I mentioned before. If disable copy and paste is enabled for the exam, they'll get these right click detected flags for the exam. So it doesn't allow that little option to pop up. And then on question 3, we had some speech detected personal assistant flags. So the speech detected flags, basically how that works is we're constantly monitoring for certain buzzwords such as like Siri, OK Google, Alexa, things like that. So once one of those buzzwords is detected, you'll get a speech detected personal assistant flag, and then we can come to this transcript option here, and it'll show you whatever was spoken after that speech detected flag was put onto the exam. So it does give you a written transcript just so you don't have to listen through the whole thing. You have something visual for that. And then lastly here, we see this test window lost focus, and that's where I was mentioning if browser guard is enabled and they click outside of their testing window, they'll get that flag there. And that little pop-up will show for them on the student side. So it's showing them, hey, I'm not supposed to be doing this. They can click on OK and just continue the exam as they should. And then lastly, just over here in the bottom left, this little details section here, this just shows the guidelines that were set up for the exam, any additional instructions or accommodations that are in place, just to kind of give your faculty extra visibility into that so they don't have to keep flip-flopping between 2 tabs to remember any guidelines that they may have forgotten, things like that. And this question tab, the exam that I did for this didn't actually have any questions on it, so you don't see it. But if the question actually was complete, it would show which question they were on of this portion of the video that you're reviewing. So that's what that tab does there. And then I already mentioned the transcript button as well. I think that is about it. Oh, one more thing, actually. We've got a few minutes left, so I do want to mention the summary report as well, because this can be very helpful. So the summary report, if you want to view that, It's right here at the top right. You click on summary report and it takes you to this page here. So basically what this is a condensed summary of all the exam sessions with the session details, with any notices and exam violations all added on one page. So you don't have to go into each individual student to see those. If a student had a red flag, it would appear here as well, or if they had a pop-in. And then the summary report that can be exported. So if you click on this export button here, that will download a PDF version of this report, so you can share that offline with anybody that may need to review any of the summaries for your exams. And that'll about do it for my portion of the demo. So any questions on the session viewer or that side of things? Well, I'll take that as a no, and I think that's a good thing. Hopefully it's a good thing.
Are you able to just show us what the live pop-in would look like in the faculty review?
Unfortunately, I don't have a session that I've created previously for live pop-in, but what I'll do is I'll send over an article in our knowledge base that explains a little bit more about live pop-in. And I believe it'll show you some visuals of what it does look like. But if not, I'll definitely get that from somebody. I'll send that over to Alicia so she can share that with you.
Thank you.
No problem. Any others in those last couple minutes that we got? All right, well, that'll about cover it for today. I do want to thank you guys for joining me, and your time and attention is greatly appreciated. We had some great questions too. I always love a good group of questions. So I'm happy to answer those, but if you have anything else that you didn't think of during this session, feel free to let me know through an email or give me a call, and I'll be happy to help you further. But I'll let you guys go, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for your time, Austin. Just for everyone who is still connected to the call, I wanted to point your direction to the chat box. I put a couple of housekeeping items. That first, that this demo is going to be posted on the CTL Professional Development SharePoint. The other piece is that we have a faculty training led by Austin Adair, our Honorlock rep. So that will be next Tuesday, October 19th at 2 p.m. We'll have more trainings. We'll probably have it recorded as well so that we can get this information distributed. We're looking to see if we can get this part of our professional development week that will be in January. So just look out for more information, get the word out about Honorlock. And thank you all for joining us today. And I hope you really support the tool and get a lot of good use out of it.
Alicia, can I ask a quick question? And it's not really a question so much for Austin, but probably Carrie. And maybe this hasn't been decided yet, but is this automatically going to be put in every Blackboard site, or is this only for certain courses to start out with the spring? Or, I'm just trying to think of like the setup process.
So when we, the LTI is installed, the tool is ready to go on Blackboard. As soon as I create a placement, that makes it available to every course.
Okay.
Now, I think we're going to talk about the specifics about where faculty are going to go to add it. But yes, it would be available to every course as soon as it's made live.
Wonderful.
And on that, I don't know the go live date, so if someone could get that to us, that'd be cool.
I'm
Okay,
assuming
Carrie, we'll follow up.
spring
Great.
would be the live date. Spring is the soonest.
No, we plan to go ahead and turn it on now.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna hopefully get a few people to pilot it during the fall. We obviously, some of the people on this call are on the call were interested faculty. We still have Teresa from the science department, which we've gotten a lot of interest from. And so we were going to do kind of a soft pilot, turn it on, let those folks that have reached out to us use it, and then continue professional development and do a harder rollout in the spring for everyone, specifically for online and identity verification. So that's our plan as of now.
Thank you.
All right, is that if that's everything, we can go ahead and log off. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. I'll end the call now. I was giving you guys the opportunity to talk. I didn't want to
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thanks everyone for coming.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take care, everybody.